Imagine discovering that the life you built was all based on a lie. A betrayal so deep it shakes everything you know. One man's journey from love to heartbreak unfolds when he learns he may not be the father of the child he's sacrificed everything for. In a battle for truth, justice, and redemption, he faces impossible choices and unimaginable revelations. Will he find the strength to fight for the daughter he loves, or will the truth tear them apart? Stay with us to witness every twist, every heartbreak, and the unexpected ending that changes everything. The moment Emily and I agreed to separate, it was as if the world I had carefully built around us crumbled to the ground. Our once unbreakable promises, whispered into the night, dissolved, replaced by a battlefield of legal fights and financial strain. This wasn't what I had envisioned for us, for our family. The love we had nurtured for years had grown bitter and heavy, slipping through my hands like sand. Each step of the divorce process was a raw, wound reopening, a painful reminder that what I thought was permanent was only fleeting. I tried to salvage the good from the ashes, but it seemed that every attempt was met with fresh disappointments. The responsibilities left in the wake of that love weighed on me like stones. There was the monthly alimony, a sum I paid without question, thinking it was a small price to ensure Emily and our daughter, Lucy, were cared for. But the burden grew heavier with each passing month. My job had disappeared at the worst possible time, leaving me without the means to meet these obligations, my savings slipping through my fingers like the last grains of an hourglass. In those nights, pacing the dimly lit rooms of an empty apartment, the silence around me was oppressive, amplifying every beat of dread and worry. Each letter that came through the door, each bill I could barely afford, echoed the ticking clock. And yet, even as I was drowning in responsibility and fear, the law showed no compassion, no relief, as if it didn't care that I was falling further and further behind. I didn't want to evade my duties. I wanted only to be treated fairly, to breathe a little, to see my own life on the other side of this battle. But it felt as though the system had no interest in understanding the man behind the papers. My daughter, Lucy, was the one glimmer in that bleak stretch of my days. She was a light, a breath of life that I clung to. But even with her, time was limited, her custody confined to fleeting weekends. In those few hours, I tried to be the father she remembered, to be there for her without letting her sense the weight crushing down on me. The sweetness of her presence was a balm, yet the responsibility of fatherhood was daunting. I found myself wondering, how had we gotten here? How had I gone from the thrill of our wedding day to this hollow solitude, barely hanging on to the idea of family? As the weeks passed, I could feel the toll that all these responsibilities took on my soul. I could see it in the way my hands lingered too long on her little backpack after dropping her off, in the ache in my chest as I watched her disappear down the sidewalk. In those quiet, stolen moments, I clung to the love I felt for Lucy, but the doubts crept in like shadows. Would we ever escape this painful cycle? Would we ever find peace on the other side of these struggles? As the months dragged on, the weight of child support settled over me like a dark cloud, growing heavier with each passing day. The promises I had made, the responsibilities I had taken on willingly, had somehow turned into chains that bound me tighter every time I tried to break free. Each job application became another reminder of rejection, another step further from the life I had once believed I could provide for Lucy. Even simple, fleeting interactions in crowded rooms, like the distant chatter of colleagues or the warmth of old friends' laughter, only emphasized how far I had fallen. The desperation clawed at me. Each week, I watched my bank account dwindle, my nights spent tracing over financial statements in the dim light of my small kitchen. The silence of those moments became a mirror, reflecting my own frustration, showing me a man whose dreams had turned to obligations. But I wasn't only failing myself. The emptiness of each envelope, each overdue notice, told me I was failing Lucy too. Despite the looming debt and the relentless phone calls from creditors, my weekends with her were untouchable. I would have given anything to find more time, to make these brief hours stretch into something that felt like real fatherhood. Sometimes, I'd wake up hours before picking her up, imagining her small hand in mine, her laughter filling the spaces that loneliness had carved out. Yet as soon as she arrived, the pressure to provide, to shelter her from every storm, grew fiercer. The court was unyielding. No matter how clearly I tried to explain my struggles, each failure to meet the set amount marked me as irresponsible, as if I were choosing this struggle, as if it were a fate I had gladly embraced. When Emily learned that I had missed yet another payment, she wasted no time involving the court. One day, when the knock finally came on my door, I knew what awaited me. In a breath, my dignity was gone, the officer's voice cold and formal, as though I had committed some unspeakable crime. The humiliation sank deep. Even now, the memory of it cuts like a dull, relentless ache. Walking out of that building, I could still feel the stares, the judgment, as if the world had written me off. Lucy was too young to understand the details, but even she seemed to sense the tension each time I returned from court. Her innocent questions stung, her little face watching me with the trust one struggled to maintain. Every sacrifice, every decision I made was for her, and yet the more I tried to keep up, the farther behind I seemed to fall. Amidst all of this, the resilience I'd clung to in the beginning was fading, replaced by a simmering anger and sadness. But somewhere beneath the fear, beneath the pain, I sensed something else, an urge to endure, to push through the walls around me. Every weekend with Lucy reminded me of that silent, essential truth. No court order, no financial hardship could ever sever the bond that tied us. One evening, after another grueling day of job hunting, I found an envelope in my mailbox, tucked between bills and legal notices. Its weight seemed different, more personal. My heart pounded as I opened it, pulling out a handwritten letter. It was from Brandon, an old friend, someone I hadn't heard from in years. For a moment, I let myself hope that maybe this was just a message of support, a reminder that someone remembered me beyond the confines of court orders and custody schedules. But as I read the first few lines, the words blurred, each sentence striking like a blow. Brandon's letter wasn't about support. It was a confession, reluctant unraveling of truths he could no longer keep hidden. He had stumbled upon something, an affair that Emily had hidden for years, and with it, the haunting possibility that Lucy was not, in fact, my daughter. As my eyes scanned the letter, my hands shook. The sounds around me faded. It was as if the room itself was shrinking, trapping me with a truth I had never even considered. I held the paper tightly, my knuckles white, feeling as if the world had tilted on its axis. How could it be possible? Every moment I had cherished with Lucy, every bedtime story, every scraped knee I had bandaged, it had all been a lie? The warmth of those memories suddenly felt hollow, as if I were grasping at shadows. My mind raced with questions, my heart tangled in disbelief and a creeping anger that filled my veins. The weight of betrayal was physical. I could feel it pressing on my chest, stealing the air from my lungs. I sat there, staring at the letter, the words, "She might not be your daughter," replaying in my mind like a broken record. The woman I had trusted, the woman with whom I had built a life, had deceived me in the most intimate, profound way. Emily's face swam before me, moments from our life together resurfacing in fragments. The way her eyes had once softened when she looked at me, the way she had whispered promises that now felt like mockery. The urge to dismiss it, to deny Brandon's words, surged within me. But as much as I wanted to tear up that letter, to pretend I'd never read it, the doubts were already rooted. Memories I'd once held dear twisted into questions, pieces of a puzzle I hadn't even known existed. I needed answers, no matter how much they might hurt. The only way forward was to confront the truth, to bring light to the shadows cast over my life. In that moment, I resolved to find out for certain. The thought of taking a paternity test was terrifying, yet there was no other path left. Lucy was my heart, my reason for enduring every hardship, but I had to know if the love I felt was tied to a truth that ran deeper than the bond we had forged. As I held the letter, I realized that this small, unassuming piece of paper had altered everything, leaving me at the edge of a choice that would shape the future. The day the test results arrived felt like standing on the edge of an abyss. I held the envelope in my hands, its edges sharp against my fingertips, a weight that was somehow heavier than anything I had ever carried. I stared at my name printed on the front, stark and indifferent, a reminder that I was about to cross into a new reality, one where everything I knew, everything I had built my life around, could be stripped away. I opened the envelope slowly, as though dragging out those last moments of hope would somehow make the truth easier to bear. The words on the page were clinical, almost sterile in their delivery. I was not Lucy's biological father. Those few lines seemed to bleed into each other, robbing me of everything I thought I knew. In an instant, the world went silent, my heartbeat thundering in my ears as if it, too, were reeling from the betrayal. Lucy, the child I had held, cherished, and protected, was not mine. The shock was sharp, a cold wave that made me clutch the paper tighter, as if holding it might somehow ground me. My mind flashed through memories in rapid succession. The night spent comforting her when she was sick, the bedtime stories she demanded in her soft, sleepy voice, the countless Saturdays spent at the park, her laughter filling the air. All of it now felt like a dream, a beautiful lie that had been shattered with a single piece of paper. I felt a crushing emptiness take hold, a sorrow that was almost physical in its weight. The connection I'd felt to Lucy, the bond that had once seemed so pure and unbreakable, was now tangled with betrayal, with questions that clawed at my mind. How could Emily have let me live a lie for so long? How could she have watched me pour everything I had into Lucy without ever telling me the truth? The love I had for Lucy remained, but it was shadowed now, fractured by the knowledge that it wasn't rooted in the truth I had believed. Yet, even in the depths of my despair, I felt an unexpected clarity, a fierce, unyielding determination to continue being the father Lucy knew. She was still the child I had raised, the child I had sacrificed for, even if blood didn't bind us. In that moment, I understood that fatherhood was more than biology. It was the sleepless nights, the little hands that reached for mine in times of need, the quiet promises I had made to her, even before I knew the truth. Lucy might not be my daughter in the way I once thought, but she was still my child in every way that mattered. As I folded the test results and tucked them away, I felt something shift inside me. The anger and sadness were still there, simmering beneath the surface, but they were joined by a renewed purpose. Emily's betrayal had taken much from me, but it hadn't stolen my love for Lucy. I realized then that the journey ahead would be about reclaiming my life, about finding justice not only for myself but for the years I had spent as her father. And though the truth had torn open an ache that might never heal, it had also solidified my resolve to stay in her life, to be there, unwavering, as the father she knew. Entering that courtroom was like stepping into a battlefield, one where every glance, every whispered conversation seemed to press down on me, testing my resolve. I had prepared myself for this moment, rehearsing every fact, every argument. But as soon as I saw Emily sitting there, her eyes averted, something inside me tightened, a mixture of anger, disappointment, and strangely, a sadness that lingered like the last echo of something I had once cherished. I could feel every lie she had told, every hidden truth, weighing on me. But now, I was here to expose them. My attorney laid out our case, each statement like a brick forming the foundation of my pursuit for justice. Piece by piece, the story came into the light. Emily's deception, the years of betrayal, and the painful reality that Lucy's biological father had been part of her life all along, lurking in the background, silent but complicit. I sat rigid, listening to the evidence unfold, trying to keep my composure. But when Emily's partner was revealed to be Lucy's father, a man who had walked away from his responsibilities while I was left to carry them alone, a raw anger boiled inside me, nearly overwhelming. How had they orchestrated this web of lies? Watching me struggle, knowing the truth. As the realization settled, a bitter irony filled the room. There I was, a man who had devoted himself to a child he believed was his, fighting to protect and support her, while her real father had sat idle, a phantom in her life, contributing nothing. In those quiet moments, I wondered how long Emily and her partner had planned this, if they had ever felt even a sliver of guilt. The truth was humiliating, infuriating, but it also strengthened my resolve. I wanted justice, not just for the deception I'd endured, but for the time I had lost, the years I could never reclaim. Then came the final blow. Documents revealing that Emily's partner had also been financially supporting her, even as I struggled under the weight of court-mandated payments. The discovery hit me like a wave, a surreal mix of fury and relief that the truth was finally, undeniably out. The courtroom's atmosphere shifted as the judge absorbed this revelation, and for the first time, I felt a sense of vindication, as if a hidden hand had finally pointed to the real injustice I had endured. When the verdict came down, it was swift and sure. Emily was found guilty of fraud, her lies unraveled for everyone to see. I watched her face as the ruling was read, searching for any sign of regret or remorse. Instead, I saw only a strained defiance, as if she still clung to some shred of control. But it didn't matter now. The ruling included a restitution order, a small recompense for the financial strain and emotional toll I had suffered, as well as the transfer of a property in my name. It wasn't about the money or even the house. It was the acknowledgement that I had been wronged, that the sacrifices I had made hadn't been in vain. Even in victory, though, there was a lingering sadness. Justice had been served, but it didn't erase the betrayal, the emptiness left by Emily's deceit. As I walked out of that courthouse, I felt the weight of the past fall away, replaced by something different, a fierce clarity. I couldn't rewrite what had been done, couldn't take back the years I'd spent believing in a lie, but I could decide what came next. And as I thought of Lucy, I knew that this was only the beginning of a new chapter, one where I would continue as her father, no matter what the past had tried to steal from me. With the courtroom battle behind me, I was left to face the reality of my relationship with Lucy. The legal victories, the restitution, they meant something, of course, but not nearly as much as the bond one had with her. That bond was far from simple now, strained by questions of trust, of truth, but it was still there, as unbreakable as ever. Every time I looked at her, I saw the years we had shared, the promises I had made, and the laughter and love we had built. None of that could be erased by a test result or a courtroom ruling. So, I made a decision that felt both inevitable and terrifying. I would fight for full custody of Lucy. The idea of her growing up in an environment clouded by Emily's deceit, bound to a man who had only just come forward, seemed unthinkable. Lucy deserved a stable, honest life, something Emily had proven she couldn't offer. I wanted Lucy to know what it felt like to be truly loved without condition or hidden motives. I wanted her to feel safe, to feel that she had someone who would be there no matter what. The custody hearings were grueling, a second act to the turmoil I had only just begun to recover from. Emily and her partner attempted to paint a picture of my shortcomings, casting doubt on my capacity as a father. I faced their accusations head-on, armed with years of memories, small moments of love and care that no one could deny. Every bedtime story, every scraped knee, every weekend spent making her laugh, they were woven into who I was, who we were together. No lawyer, no court document could strip away those memories. And then there was Lucy herself. In those tense courtroom encounters, I would sometimes see her there, her small face caught between confusion and curiosity, sensing the weight of the decisions being made. Each time our eyes met, something in me reignited a deep, unshakable conviction that I had to do this for both of us. She had been a part of my life for so long that the thought of letting her go felt like tearing away a piece of my own soul. The judge listened to every testimony, every argument, and finally, after what felt like an eternity, delivered the decision. Custody was awarded to me, Emily and her partner were ordered to provide financial support for Lucy, ensuring her well-being. The relief was overwhelming, tempered by a quiet sadness, a reminder of the path we had taken to get here. I felt vindicated, yet there was a bittersweet quality to it all. This wasn't just a victory. It was a testament to the love and commitment that had survived despite every betrayal. Taking Lucy's hand as we left the courthouse, I felt a calm settle over me. She was my daughter, my family, in every way that mattered. The truth of her paternity no longer defined our relationship. What mattered were the days and years we built together, and the new life we could start now. I knew the journey wouldn't be easy. There would be questions, wounds that might never fully heal. But as I looked down at her, at the trust in her eyes, I felt the certainty that whatever lay ahead, we would face it together. In that moment, as we stepped into a new chapter, I made a promise to her and to myself. I would be the father she deserved, not because of a biological bond, but because of every choice, every sacrifice, and every moment of love I had already given, and would continue to give, no matter what. The first few months with Lucy under my full care were a whirlwind of new routines, small victories, and moments of exhaustion that, despite everything, filled me with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. It was as if I were rediscovering life through her eyes, each day a chance to learn more about the child I had fought so hard to protect. Every morning, as I woke up to the sound of her laughter or the quiet rustling of her in the kitchen, I felt a gratitude that was almost humbling, a reminder of how fragile and yet fiercely resilient family could be. Our days settled into a rhythm. There were school runs, afternoons filled with homework and laughter, and nights where I would tuck her in, watching as she drifted off to sleep with a peace that made every struggle worthwhile. In those quiet moments, as the house filled with the warmth of her presence, I realized that the sacrifices, the battles, had brought us to a place I hadn't dared to dream of. I had longed for stability, for something real to hold on to, and here it was, in the shape of this little girl who looked up at me with a trust that made every hardship seem small. Of course, there were days that tested my patience, moments where the weight of single parenthood pressed heavily on my shoulders. Lucy's questions about her mother and the life we had before were unavoidable, and each answer required careful thought, each explanation another reminder of the past we had left behind. But with each conversation, I found a way to tell her the truth without diminishing the love I felt, emphasizing that our story, despite its painful twists, was one of resilience and commitment. She would listen, her gaze thoughtful, and then smile, reassured by the promise that we were in this together. In those early mornings and quiet evenings, I often found myself reflecting on the meaning of fatherhood. The old ideas I'd once clung to, the assumptions about blood ties, the belief that biology defined family had dissolved, replaced by something far more profound. Lucy had shown me that true fatherhood was built not on genetics, but on countless acts of love, of choosing to stay, to nurture, to sacrifice. It was the weight of her head resting on my shoulder, the trust in her voice when she called me Dad, and the joy that filled our home despite everything we had been through. Sometimes, in the stillness, my thoughts would drift back to Emily. There was a sadness there, a lingering ache for the life we might have shared had honesty been at its core. But even as those memories surfaced, they felt like a distant echo, a past life that no longer held power over me. My life, my love, was here, in these moments with Lucy, in the future we were building together. The bitterness had been replaced by a quiet acceptance, a peace that allowed me to move forward without resentment. As the months passed, I came to realize that this new life wasn't just a second chance. It was perhaps the life I was always meant to have. The bond Lucy and I shared had been forged through trials, strengthened by truths that might have broken a weaker connection. But here we were, together, carving out a place in the world that was ours alone, free from the shadows of the past. In Lucy, I had found a reason to keep going, a purpose that gave my life a meaning I hadn't known before. And with every step we took, every laugh we shared, I knew that I had become the father she needed. not because of a shared name or lineage, but because of the love and devotion that had grown between us. I had found in her a family that was stronger than blood, bound not by circumstances, but by choice.
Keep watching our stories by clicking on one of the videos that appear on the screen, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to be alerted about new videos. See you next time.